We're going to see a spike, as we're seeing even today, in deaths throughout the country, particularly in the hotspot areas like New York.
Coming up, Dr. Anthony Fauci says the nation is making progress, but needs to maintain this course to beat back the coronavirus. Of the details ahead.
Most of the big coronavirus hotspots have hit urban centers, but are rural hospital chains ready to handle it? I'm Joe Khalil here in Washington. Take a look at what lawmakers are saying about that problem and some concerns that they have if, in fact, rural hospitals get overwhelmed.
Members of Congress typically don't give out their personal numbers to constituents, but one lawmaker did amid the coronavirus crisis, and thousands have taken him up on it. I'm Jessie Chenor in Washington, and I'll have that story coming up.
4 Georgians stranded at sea are back at home thanks to an unexpected ally. I'm Kellie Meyer reporting from Washington how one U.S. Senator gave them a lift home.
I'm Alexandra Limon in Washington. Coming up, I'll tell you how the Justice Department and U.S. attorneys are fighting online scammers who are taking advantage of the pandemic.
I'm Anna Warnicki in Washington. Companies across the country are stepping up to help fight the coronavirus. I'll have that story coming up.
I'm Trevor Shirley in Washington, where the USO is going digital to keep the mission of supporting troops alive. I've got that story coming up.
Dr. Anthony Fauci says even though the worst is yet to come, there are signs of progress in the country's fight against the coronavirus.
The next week, we're going to see a spike, as we're seeing even today, in deaths throughout the country, particularly in the hotspot areas like New York. But simultaneous with that, we're starting to see some, cautiously optimistic type signs.
Fauci says Americans' efforts to keep social distance will limit new cases and decrease deaths.
No crowds more than 10 people, 6 feet away, avoid crowded places, telework when you can. Those are the kind of things that if we keep doing, we're going to see an even greater impact.
And he says the country must stay the course to beat back the virus.
That's the reason why we need to keep, as I say, putting our foot on the accelerator and not on the brake.
The federal social distancing guidelines are currently planned to continue until April 30th, but Fauci says they could be extended.
We hope that the April 30th deadline will be long enough. But again, as I've said, the virus determines the timetable, not us.
After that, Fauci says leaders can reevaluate and may take a more tailored approach.
We're a big country, and there's a big difference between what's going on in New York and in New Orleans and what's going on in Omaha, Nebraska.
But no matter what, Dr. Fauci says everyone, everywhere, should be operating under physical separation guidelines. Reporting in Washington, I'm Morgan Wright.
Here's our liquid hand soap. We have a lot of different varieties.
For 10 years, David Simnick at Soapbox has made and sold soap with a mission.
Every time someone buys one of our products, we donate a bar of soap.
But when one of their partners called in March requesting hand sanitizer, that mission grew.
Within 24 hours, we had sourced a formula. We created a whole bottle and design and look. We were able to get the approval from the FDA, and then we went to market.
In 3 weeks, Simnick and his team produced 3 million bottles of sanitizer, a process he says would normally take 9 months.
This is the fastest that we've ever launched anything into market.
Soapbox is just one of the many companies stepping up to meet the demand for essential supplies. For example, right now, Austin-based Tito's Handmade Vodka is shifting production to produce 24 tons of hand sanitizer.
To me, it's just an indicator of the kind of ingenuity and the adaptability of our entrepreneurs in Texas and elsewhere to step up and meet the need.
This week, companies like Tesla and Xerox say they're revving up work to help address the shortage of ventilators.
We really want to provide something that is essential PPE.
Simnick says Soapbox is standing by their commitment to charity and will donate 3 million bars of soap to match the bottles of hand sanitizers they sell to hospitals and retailers across the country.
Our whole team feels incredibly privileged and honored in order to stand with our community right now and make a difference.
In Washington, I'm Anna Warnicki.
Peter McCoy has been U.S. Attorney for the District of South Carolina for just 1 week.
We're seeing folks that are out there taking advantage of people while they're scared.
The Justice Department asked all U.S. attorneys to focus on crimes related to the coronavirus. So McCoy set up a coronavirus strike team.
You're going to probably see these things popping up all across the districts, across the nation.
Because people are spending more time at home, they're also spending more time online and on social media. And that makes everyone more likely to encounter scams.
Hey, I've got test kits that are out here. Send me your information and send me this much money, and we'll send you the kit.
The FDA has not approved an at-home coronavirus test, and there is no vaccine yet. Scammers are also selling in-demand products like hand sanitizers and masks
with no intention on deliveries
because they don't actually have the supplies. Suspected fraud can be reported to the National Center for Disaster Fraud, or NCDF, by phone or email. The information will be investigated and compiled into a national database. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Some of my hospitals only have, 40, 50 beds.
Congressman Doug Loeffler says it wouldn't take many coronavirus cases to overwhelm hospital systems in rural California.
You don't need a very big ripple of the virus coming through a small community to fill that out.
Loeffler says FEMA provided additional beds, but that doesn't fix the shortage of medical equipment and especially medical professionals in many rural areas.
We don't have a great amount of medical staff, too. I mean, we haven't had the influx of doctors.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say the shortage of medical supplies and doctors in rural parts of the country was a problem even before the coronavirus outbreak. They say the virus simply put a spotlight on it.
This crisis is a reminder that we should have invested in our public health and our healthcare system decades ago.
Josh Harder says the coronavirus prompted him to push for more telehealth access, tailored for rural areas like his Central Valley district.
That's a good mechanism for a lot of people across the valley.
Congressman Jim Costa proposed a more long-term fix to promote rural access to care.
But we need to build more medical schools in this country.
Costa says regions with medical schools and doctor training typically attract and retain more doctors.
It's the ability to provide a quick response that is ultimately going to protect the health of individuals.
Costa hopes rural areas get the support from the federal government they need as the battle against the virus continues. In Washington, I'm Joe Khalil.
But eventually, the rent will be due.
Solomon Green with the Urban Institute warns the coronavirus crisis could be followed by a housing crisis.
And we need to be planning now for that cliff.
Green says millions of Americans need long-term solutions to keep them from losing their homes if their jobs don't survive the pandemic.
Renters are more likely to be hard hit by the crisis. They tend to have lower incomes. They also tend to work in the industries that we're seeing are losing jobs.
The $2 trillion coronavirus relief law does give temporary protection from eviction and foreclosure for some Americans. But Green says Congress must provide long-term support for many more of us.
We've got to do more.
Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says building more affordable housing is key.
We just need to put incentives out there for home builders and others.
Democratic lawmakers say they will not allow a flood of foreclosures and evictions like those caused by the financial crisis in 2008. Illinois Congresswoman Sherry Busto says families, not banks, must come first.
At this point, I think it's just fair to say that we're willing to look at anything to make sure that we're helping our families.
But Kansas Republican Ron Estes says Congress should wait a bit.
Businesses would be able to come back to work, and employers or employees would be ready and at a place to get back to work as well.
Estes argues the money already in the pipeline might be enough. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
Just felt like I needed to do something, and that just came to me. I said, well, I'll just get my dadgum cell phone out.
Members of Congress are used to getting calls from constituents, but few of them pick up on their personal number.
everything I got's because of people that I work for. So I'm more than happy to share it with them.
Last week, Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett tweeted out his personal cell phone number.
I don't even know your name. You don't even have to live in my congressional district.
Burchett wanted to help people feeling overwhelmed by the coronavirus crisis.
Together, we're going to get through this, folks.
In the days that followed, the former Knoxville mayor's phone received thousands of calls, voicemails, and texts from people not only in his district, but across the country and around the world. He says many are worried about losing their homes or businesses, and others want to know how to help.
But mostly, folks just want to hear a voice.
Beyond the physical effects, the pandemic is also impacting people's mental health. Burchett says 9 people in his community have recently died by suicide.
That's a horrible, horrible thing.
Burchett has referred constituents to available resources and even called the police for wellness checks.
Everybody knows me pretty much. I've lived here my whole life.
He says answering the calls and texts takes about 12 hours a day, but he isn't about to stop.
It's just good therapy for them, and honestly, it's good therapy for me.
In Washington, I'm Jessie Tenor.
Four Georgians stranded off the coast of Florida after nearly a month at sea are back in Georgia. They were without a way home until Georgia's governor asked Georgia's junior U.S. senator if she could give them a lift.
I was really honored to receive a call from the governor to ask if I could get involved.
Georgia Republican Senator Kellie Loeffler is a former corporate CEO and a co-owner of the WNBA Atlanta Dream. She is reportedly the wealthiest U.S. senator, and she just happens to have her own private jet.
I was able to send my plane down there and bring the Georgians home last night.
The two couples, Alan and Sharon Podred from Marietta and David and Diane Fowler from Sharpsburg, had been passengers on the Coral Princess cruise ship that was forced to stay at sea because of the coronavirus outbreak.
About 2 weeks longer than they had planned.
Senator Loeffler tells me she worked with Governor Kemp and the State Department to make sure these Georgians got home. And they're continuing to work to find ways to bring other Georgians caught out of the country by coronavirus travel restrictions back to the U.S.
This is something our office gets involved in routinely. My staff has been tremendous. I just want to recognize them and their work.
Loeffler says she met the passengers when they arrived back in their home state.
To see the relief and the happiness on their faces, though we were all wearing surgical masks and gloves and social distance ourselves, I'm really happy to welcome them home.
Reporting in Washington, I'm Kellie Meyer.
As the world stands mostly still, the U.S. military is on the front lines against the coronavirus, both overseas and at home.
We have National Guardsmen right now all over the country standing up to do everything from building field hospitals to actually medical personnel clinicians.
And the USO continues to support those troops and their families, albeit in a socially distant way.
Well, we've obviously had to pivot like everybody else, but what we've done is we've pivoted to virtual programming, essentially.
USO CEO J.D. Crouch says those changes include digital reading and entertainment programs, along with online coffee connections for military spouses.
Well, this brings them together to be able to support each other, share ideas.
But Crouch says having so many National Guard troops deployed domestically makes their mission even more of a challenge.
It's stretching resources, and it's one of those things that we obviously got to go where the fight is.
He says the public can help by donating items for care packages like these.
But we need other things like snacks and beverages and toiletries, stuff like that are actually really helpful in supporting our men and women.
Monetary donations are also welcome, says Crouch, with more information available on the USO website. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
America's small businesses are the backbone of our communities. When you look and we hear all about the big companies that we know so well, but the small companies, when added together, are actually a bigger force. A lot of people don't understand that. You do, we do. Our nation's 30 million small businesses employ nearly half of our workforce. My administration will continue to take the boldest action in history to bring immediate relief to the small businesses. So when we open up in a hopefully very short period of time, we're back into business. That's what we want. And we have lots of stimulus. So I think we can actually, with the stimulus and with the pent-up demand, I think we can really do numbers that are equivalent and maybe even better than we were doing before within a fairly short period of time. That's what my hope is. As you know, on Friday we launched the Paycheck Protection Program to help small businesses keep workers on the payroll. As of today, SBA has processed over $70 billion in guaranteed loans, which is far greater than we would have ever thought at this time, I think, Steve. I don't think we ever had any number like that in mind. That will provide much needed relief for the more than 250,000 businesses that have applied for these loans, and these numbers will continue to rise quickly. Again, far greater than anything we could have expected. We thank you, and we thank the thousands of employees for responding. And by the way, we're going to be going for, it looks like, a very substantial increase in the number, because we'll be running out of money pretty quickly, which is a good thing in this case, not a bad thing. And Steve will discuss it, but we're in talks to supplement the fund and do more money. So that's the way it's moving.
I had the opportunity this morning to speak to Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Kevin McCarthy. I urged them at the president's request that they get us another $250 billion approved, and we look forward to the Senate passing that on Thursday and the House passing that on Friday. This is much needed support, and we want to make sure that every single small business can participate, and we want to assure the workers that if you don't get the loan this week, there'll be plenty of money for you next week. And this isn't just small businesses, it's charities, it is independent contractors, sole proprietors. So again, I just want to thank everybody for their broad participation.
To move him because they think there's going to be, an influx of patients, I don't think that's fair. That's his home. He's been there for 6 years almost. The people that normally would FaceTime me so he could see me, they're not going to be there. So I don't get that option. At least he knew I was still involved because he would see me every so often. He can't retain that part of his brain damaged. I wanted him to know I'm here the way I can be. Well, that's over. And if he passes, he will pass thinking that I deserted him. We've been married for 45 years. I would never abandon you. I wouldn't. I would never do that. We married till death do us part.
In my stage of training, we are doing what's called cross-country flights, which means doing flights over 50 miles. So that worked out perfectly for this trip. So we're going down to rural hospitals that are 50 miles away along the I-81 corridor, because those are the hospitals that are really hurting. Just turned 16 like a couple weeks ago, and everything was kind of taken from me. Like lacrosse season ended, the school year is effectively over, and all I really had left was flight training. There's a big emphasis at Landon to serve the community, and so I talked to my dad about ways to fly and serve at the same time, and we came up with Operation SOS, meaning supplies over the skies. So as we were coming down to land, we were calling out our position, and then all of a sudden on the frequency, we hear from the ground, November 172 Delta Romeo, is that you with the supplies? And I was just kind of shocked because I didn't expect that. So I call back, yes, that is us with the supplies. We're going to try and do it as much as possible, but really the hard part is not the flying down there or finding hospitals that are in need. The hard part is gathering the supplies. So every week that we can gather enough supplies to go down and fly, we're going to go down and fly.
There she is. Look at her. She's a summer clothes. You gotta open the door. There is. Here she is. Hi, Mom. Mom's coming home.
Because the whole world has it now. I thought I had a cold. I didn't think anything of it.
So I said, okay, Mom, just stay in, rest, and you'll feel better. The next day, it got progressively worse.
I felt like it was an elephant on my chest. Yeah, I couldn't even walk. I couldn't eat nothing. My temperature was 103.
So at that point, we had decided to call an ambulance.
Oh, yeah, it was serious, all right. I didn't think at the beginning until the doctor says you're positive. And that got me.
Being that she's such a devout Catholic, we thought that it would be nice if there was a priest on hand to read her last rites if it came down to it, because honestly, we thought that's where this was going.
Not you can't. No hugging.
No hugging.
No hugging. Hi, Mom.
In the hospital, they said I was a miracle. Maybe I was, but I worked at it. Let me tell you something.
That's my Anna Banana. I told her as soon as we can get out and start shopping again, gonna go find that S to put on her chest, because she is definitely our superwoman.
I am tough, but you know what? It's positive thinking. That's all it is. Pray and get out of bed. Don't stay in bed all the time. Even if you sit in a chair, you have to move a little. And I want to say to them, if I did it, you can do it.
Go ahead.
God bless you. God bless them all. God bless them all.
All of a sudden, the second week of March, like all that stuff just dried up. I got an email one day. It was the first Monday of March. It was like, hey, we were going to bring you in, but given the circumstances, we're putting every position on hold. I got a lot of, calls back from, outside marketing jobs that, hey, we're not going to hire, or that position's been canceled. And so it sort of turned into maybe some optimism, became sort of pessimism. These days, I'm applying for jobs. I get up every morning and check LinkedIn, Indeed. Obviously, I check my unemployment status on to see if I get unemployment. I'm currently helping my wife teach some kids that we work with at home, and then on top of that, I've got several Craigslist ads out there to do odd jobs like yard work and things like that. I'm sort of seeing the writing on the wall. I'm getting concerned that it's what was going to be unemployed until April or May could be June or July or August.
We live in a time when misinformation, falsehoods,
and outright lies spread like viruses online, through social media, and even at times in the media at large. We have witnessed a concerning shift over the last several decades where policy decisions seem to be driven by ideology and politics instead of facts and evidence. So the most effective tool we have in this fight at this moment is physical distancing, which means every city and state that has not yet implemented shelter in place or stay at home restrictions needs to do so immediately. We are also asking that physical distancing measures not be relaxed prematurely. We understand that people are suffering great financial and emotional pain in having much of the economy shut down, in not being able to gather with their loved ones. Science and the evidence have to rule the day. And when we make treatment decisions about COVID-19 or any other disease, physicians base those recommendations, of course, in a shared decision-making process with our patients on the evidence and the fact. Now, absolutely, clinical trials are going on right now. That's how we get the data that we need. And some of those clinical trials are using hydroxychloroquine. And that is appropriate. We know there is compassionate use. But whatever the situation, physicians don't make recommendations, treatment recommendations, as you heard me say earlier, on whims.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming.